Welcome to Catholic Ed for All, your weekly insight into topics of special education in Catholic schools. My name is Dr. Raul Escarpio, and I invite you to join me each week as we learn how to be more inclusive in Catholic schools and continue to live out St. John Paul II's message of open wide the doors to Christ. Many thanks go out to RCL Benzinger, who is generously sponsoring this podcast. RCL Benzinger enriches the worldwide Catholic community by providing the most engaging and highest quality resources, programs, and services rooted in the rich and diverse tradition of the Catholic faith. And now, on to our show. On the show today, I am joined by Dr. Gail Donahue, Director for the Academy of Catholic Educators, ACES, at Notre Dame of Maryland. Why, hello, Gail. Welcome to the show, and thanks for being here.
Hi, Raul. Thanks for inviting me to this conversation.
Oh, I'm so happy you could join us. Gail, can you please tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I've been a Catholic educator for over 40 years, so there's lots of gray hair there. I began as a classroom teacher, spent 10 years as a reading specialist. I would say that my principal said, you reach out to those children who are struggling. And so I took that and said, okay, I'm going to work with those students who really have a hard time, difficulty learning to read. And as I did that, I decided that I preferred a push-in program rather than a pull-out, because I wanted these children who were struggling to see other readers who were successful. And I felt that worked better. So I worked as a reading specialist for about 10 years. Then I moved to an assistant principalship at a high school and then a principal. And currently I am working for the ACES program at Notre Dame, where I work as an instructional coach. So I've always been drawn to those children who learn differently, and I wanted to make sure that their needs were being met in the best way that I could. So I became kind of a little expert on differentiation and how to differentiate instruction, and that has really served me well.
Fantastic. So, you being the director of ACES at Notre Dame of Maryland, what does that job look like?
Well, we started this program as I saw a need that in our archdiocese, I think that teachers were being given some professional development, those one-shot deals, and where they would come in for a day and then they would go back to their schools, but there was never any follow-up. So we started the ACES program to Academy of Catholic Educators to be able to have a follow-up with the teachers. So it's an outreach program through the School of Education. The fees are on a sliding scale based on what the schools can afford, and the schools all use Title II funds, so there's no dipping into their operating budgets. The program offers instructional support to teachers through this professional development. So mostly it's an instructional coaching approach. We go in, we observe a teacher teaching, we offer suggestions for how they might change, but we're not there to cause any resentment or any formal observations. Sometimes we'll work with a team of teachers who the principal has designated this as a goal, and they want us to come in and help the teachers attain that goal. So we'll work with a team of teachers looking at best practice. Oftentimes, this is centered around we need for all of our students to be successful. Our classrooms are changing. They look different. We're getting an opportunity to accept children with special needs. How do we teach those children along with all the other children in the classroom? So our job is to meet with those teams of teachers, planning, researching best practice, observing the implementation, and then we kind of discuss results.
Fantastic. So, as director, you oversee this mission completely?
I do. I plan with the other two coaches, Michelle Jones and Dr. Maggie Hubbard. And together we serve over 30 schools in the Archdiocese of Washington and Baltimore. And so I make the connections, and we all meet together and decide what's the best way to approach the different schools. And then we're out there in the schools every day.
Fantastic. So when you're in these schools, what are some of the conversations that you're having with these teachers about students with special needs and looking at instruction? What kind of conversations? What do those look like?
So when we started this program 5 years ago, when we go into the classroom and we would look, it was all whole class instruction. And so whole class instruction means that you're basically teaching to the average child. And you aren't reaching all of the children. So we have made a concerted effort to move teachers away from so much whole class instruction to small group differentiated instruction, where students are given instruction based on their level and on their needs. Some of the conversations that we began to have with teachers were comments like, we weren't trained to teach children with special needs. Yeah, I don't know how to change my instruction. This is what the teacher's edition says. There was a lot of dependency on teacher editions. So we began our conversations talking with teachers about if we could break your class up into small groups, you might get to better know your students and what their needs are, and trying to get them to trust their instincts. These teachers are very dedicated. They love their children. They just didn't know how to meet all the needs. And they thought that to meet all these needs, they were going to be designing, 3, 4, 5 different lessons for every day, which was not the case. And so when we finally convinced them of that and they began to trust, we began to see lots of changes in the classrooms. And the teachers were beginning to understand how they could take the same skill, but just adjust how they approach teaching it with the different children. So with their top group, they might take a skill of, say, cause effect, and they just might talk them through the story and talk about, well, what do you think caused that? And ask them some questions. With their average group, they might have to use a graphic organizer and show them, let's fill in this graphic organizer showing the cause effect. And with those students that have special needs, they might take a personal experience, tell a story. They might act something out, say, what's causing this to happen? And actually act it out, have some manipulatives there. What's causing this water to spill over? And then take that example and then read the story again and say, let's see if we can apply that example to this story. So they're still teaching the same skill, but they're just doing it differently for the needs of the children. Does that make sense?
No, that makes perfect sense. That's what differentiation is. It's just meeting the needs of the students where they are. And did you have some pushback at first, or were there some openness, kind of like okay, I need to see it work? Is that the kind of deal that was happening there?
Right. I think we came up against 3 different situations. We had those that were so enthusiastic. We had some teachers
Yeah, yeah.
that the minute you say that, they kind of run with it. They go, oh, I knew that. Yes, I'm going to do it. And they run with it. Then we have the teacher in the middle that was, well, if I can go and watch, this other teacher do it, I'll be
Yeah.
able to pick that up. I'll be able to. I have to see it in action first. We used a lot of videos. We used a lot of teachers to go. We still do have teachers visit other schools where it's more successful, where it's already happening in place. And we really talk a lot and give those teachers support, because those teachers are on the bubble. They're ready. They just don't know they're ready. So it's building up that confidence. And then the third type of teacher was the teacher who still said, I'm not trained. I'm not sure we should be doing this. We shouldn't accept children who can't meet our high standards. And so those teachers take a little bit more hand-holding, kid gloves, convincing them, again, getting them to visit places where it is working. And it just takes a little bit longer and lots more support in the classroom.
So one thing that I'm trying to do this year is I'm trying to use the hashtag start with one. And it's basically encouraging maybe that teacher, the last one that you were talking about, or that administrator that's reluctant that's a big word for me, reluctant to include a child with special needs in their classroom or in their school. As the director of ACES, do you have any sound strategies for these principals or for these teachers that how they can just start with one and try to include all of God's children?
Um, I love that idea, and I do think it's important. And I think we have seen it work in some of our schools. What we have done is we have encouraged those principals that need that little push to attend things such as I think you interviewed Bridget McCann from Our Lady
Yes,
of. Yes, okay. So we encouraged some of our principals went to their first symposium this year. We attended, Dr. Maggie Hubbard gave the keynote address, and we took a few of our principals with us, and they got to meet with those teachers. They got to visit classrooms. So already this summer, I have met with those principals and started to plan out, so how are we going to make this work at your school? Two of those principals have signed up for the mustard seed at Loyola University in Chicago in October.
fantastic. Yes.
So Maggie and I will be attending with those principals. So those are the strategies to make the administration strong, so that the administration has both the courage, the vocabulary, the vision for how can I make it work here in our school. When I get a teacher that is like the first type that I described, that we sit down and we talk and this teacher's ready to go. They've done their background reading, they've practiced their strategies, they know what it looks like in their mind's eye. I work with that teacher to move that teacher along. It's just like I would do in the classroom. When you have your top students who are ready, you don't hold them back with everybody else. You get that teacher going. The minute I have that teacher being strong in that school, then I get other teachers from that school in to visit, or I have that teacher talk about, we always start our sessions with a sharing. So talk about, I was in your classroom, or I saw that you posted that your students were doing this. How did it go? And why did you make that choice? So I ask questions just like you would of, someone that you're interviewing, to get them to talk about. And then I'm quiet, and then the other teachers chime in. They say, well, how did you do this? And when did you plan this? And where did you get that idea? And more often than not, the teacher's like, oh, I saw it, I saw it online, or I followed this blog, or when I went to Our Lady of Lourdes, I saw that teacher using it. And that's where it starts. And then they start talking to each other, and that's more powerful than anything. So, those are the best strategies, learning from each other, I think, and seeing that it can happen in their school.
One of the things that I love about this podcast is that it actually, with God's graces and mercy, it actually helps demystify the whole special education process, Gail. And I think you at ACES can appreciate that, because a lot of times teachers don't understand that this is something that they are already doing in the classroom, that they just need the correct supports, the right supports to guide them along, and that they're not the only one that is doing this or has ever done this. So there's a lot of resources out there, ACES being one of them, that just basically handholds them if they need it. Correct, Gail? That will you will provide that support where they are at and help them with the differentiation. That they're not alone, and in a way, principals as well, that they need that support. And I recently read something that principals should change the titles on their doors from principal to chief learner or lead learner in the school. And I think if through ACES and through other means, if they're able to learn about what it means to differentiate and have students with special needs in their school, I think they would be more open to it.
Right. I'd like to share with you something else that we do at Notre Dame. One of our goals for this program is to put resource teachers, because we can't always be in every school.
Yes.
When I go to school, I go either for a full day or sometimes a half day, and I go maybe once a week to these schools, but I can't be there all the time, as same as Michelle and Maggie. But at the university, we offer Catholic school teachers 40% discount for coursework. And one of our goals is to put a special ed resource teacher in each one of our Catholic schools in the diocese where we work. And so we have a special ed program at the university where they can be certified in special ed. They take their coursework. Some of it can be, they have choices. It can be online. It can be face-to-face, whatever their preference is for learning. The university is a partner with Genesee, which is a school in Baltimore, an excellent special ed school, and we have access to international special ed teachers. And through that program, and Dr. Maggie Hubbard will be teaching in that program also, we're encouraging teachers from each one of our schools. So the principal might designate somebody that they feel has a talent for this. They can use Title II funds, or a teacher might just say, this has been my calling. I see this is what I need to do. So we put that coursework with and support. The coursework will support, the learning, what they're doing with us in teams.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And teachers, what a treat. 40% off to attend a fantastic place like Notre Dame of Maryland and get the supports of ACES. I mean, let's jump on it. Get on your principles on that one immediately. Gail, as we close the show, I want to ask you what I always ask my guests as their last question. What should Catholic special education look like?
So when you ask that, I think back to a quote from Pope Francis. And in one of his talks, he offered some proposals to improve Catholic education. And one of his proposals called for qualified preparations for formators. So I start with the teacher. The Pope was saying that he feels that it's our Catholic schools are changing, the world is changing, and our students deserve the best preparations. That education in our times is guided by a changing generation, is his quote. Therefore, every educator is required to change. So I feel that if we start with the teachers, then special education has a chance to be strong and succeed. And when I think of special education in our Catholic schools, I see a place where all are welcome, where our children should feel respected, safe, and most importantly, successful, and feel that there's a place for them in God's world.
Fantastic. What a beautiful way to end this podcast. Fantastic. Gail, I thank you so much for joining me today. It has been my treat. I wish you nothing but prayers and blessings as you continue your mission as director of ACES and helping these teachers and administrators learn what it means to include all of God's special children in the classroom. I wish you nothing but great things, and God bless you.
Well, thank you so much, Raul, and thank you for this opportunity. And I have to say thank you for all that you're doing to help Catholic educators understand how we need and how we can meet the needs of all our students. So thank you for your mission. Blessings.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for saying that. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.
Well, that's it for this week. If this podcast was a blessing to you, can you please head over to iTunes and subscribe and give us a review or a rating? It really does help other Catholic educators find the podcast and use it as a resource. Thanks again to the amazing people at RCL Benziger for generously sponsoring this podcast. Check out their new resource for Catholic schools, Blessed Are We, Faith in Action, which enables teachers to share the love of Christ with children who have special needs. Visit rclbenziger.com to learn more. Join me again next time as we continue to advance God's kingdom by including all of God's children in Catholic schools and faith formation. Until then, this is Dr. Raul Escarpio. Thanks for listening, and may God bless your day.